want to commit suicide. I am male, 34 with no job.
I lost 6 years in college, losing 1 year after another, and that led to a severe depression.
I've struggled with depression and anxiety in the past, and I'm struggling now. It's hard to get out of bed, to be motivated, and to go to work, but I do.
Most of my anger issues were caused by my parents' abuse. Now my sister has children, and I can never show my anger around them.
I'm only 25. I feel like a failure who's wasted many years. I lack motivation to do anything. I don't have drive or ambition. I slack off.
There was a time when many people at uni became close to me. We had a fabulous time for a couple of years, but unfortunately, they saw that I had this side and was depressed. They immediately distanced themselves from me, eventually completely disregarding my existence.
I am a 22-year-old female and I feel trapped at the mental age of 12. Since I became too old for free college tuition and I had been stumbling my way through course after course, achieving only passes and hating every minute of college. I have lived in my room 24/7 for about the past 2 years. Literally, I was also diagnosed with Asperger's at age 7.
I quit my last 3 jobs because I felt driven out by the environment, very little education, staying at my parents'. Society is ridiculing me, and I feel my whole life was a lie, and that I'm being paranoid. Everybody is talking behind my back. I am selfish and immature.
This year, I went back to college and I am about to turn 26. Will I ever be able to make up for lost time and reach my peers who are very successful?
I'm never fully in the moment. Well, at least that's what it feels like. I feel so hazy and foggy all the time.
I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety. I've been battling with symptoms for a long time, and while I think I know the trigger, I recognize that anxiety and depression can happen to any of us. And I therefore do not feel this event alone directly lead to my mental illness. As expected, this situation knocked my confidence and I spent days on end locked in my room at university, constantly crying, feeling hopeless, emotional, and severely low.
I feel like a loser and worthless. I no longer want to live. What should I do?
I have been severely bullied, abused, and was alone in a very small-minded community. I was really struggling with accepting and coming out as gay because of the people I was around. I became severely anxious and depressed. I also experienced trauma through coming out. I was very suicidal for years.
My parents will often be near the children. They will ridicule me in front of them. And I will feel this cold rage built inside me.
I feel like that I won't be successful or as successful as my dad, who runs his own business and makes 6 figures. I don't see where I'm going.
I'm generally doing okay, but I still have persistent worry about childhood indiscretions. It's really tiresome, and I know that ultimately it's disordered and anxious thinking.
It was so paradoxical. The harder I wanted to work, the more I wasn't doing anything. At the moment, I feel like I'm losing my time, and no matter what I'm going to do is worthless.
A complex world, counting dots on the wall, trying to find a comforting number. Every number had a different meaning by then, an ever-changing system. I would read in groups of words of a certain number, and if I was reading something distressing, I would breathe only in the gaps between groups.
The anxiety. The anxiety around achieving the right grades for uni was making me stressed. My workplace was not supportive when it came to my mental health challenges. Feeling depressed wasn't a choice. It was a natural reaction to my personal circumstances.
It's feeling overwhelmed by physical symptoms, a tightness in my chest, gasping for air, my head beginning to hurt, trying to calm myself until eventually it passes, leaving me in a state of confusion and fatigue.
I no longer enjoyed the things I used to love. I couldn't remember the last time I laughed. And I mean the belly cramping, nose snorting kind. Reading, drawing, playing games, and going for walks didn't make me feel the way they used to. It was starting to affect my work, and I showed little interest or put any effort into my relationship of 9 years.
I'm feeling lonely and depressed. I'm living alone, go to work alone, and rent a house alone. What should I do about this situation? I feel trapped.
There is no valid reason for my mind to be prioritizing a focus on any of that. It's a weird addiction to feeling bad, anxious.
The first relationship I ever witnessed in my life was an empty shell marriage where my dad resented my mother and my mother still tried to care for him. But the only reason they stayed together was to save public image. It wasn't even for us, their children.
I felt low but also agitated and confused. I felt lazy and energetic, wanting to do everything and nothing. I wanted to talk to my friends and be left alone. I hated how I looked, poking at my totally acceptable post-Easter tummy. This wasn't a down day. I wasn't feeling sorry for myself. I hated myself. I literally sneered in the mirror.
I felt as though I could do nothing right. Instead of being in their mate's corner, it felt as though everyone was sticking their boot in. I felt useless with no self-esteem, no confidence, not even the ability to retaliate. Something seemed to be preventing me from doing anything. It was like my body was numb and I had just been tasered, unable to move and be active.
Over the years, I've heard people say the following statements to me repeatedly. You're getting obsessed again. You're so sensitive. Stop overthinking and analyzing everything. You're so weird. You were really inappropriate last night. You're too intense. You're too much. You're so over the top.
Whenever my fiance and I get into a fight, he tries to hold me in place, so I have to listen to what he has to say. He also blocks doorways, so I can't get out of the room and have to sit there and listen to him. When I try to push past him, he holds me still. Is this abuse?
I visited my mom last week and I noticed that she's acting a bit strange. She seemed not to recognize me and she's really forgetful of so many things. She even loses her interest in going out with her friends. I realize these might be symptoms of dementia. I'm worried and I want to hear some of your advice about it.
I've struggled with depression and anxiety in the past, and I'm struggling now. It's hard to get out of bed, to be motivated and to go to work, but I do. I have to. I'm never fully in the moment. Well, at least that's what it feels like. I feel so hazy and foggy all the time, like I can't account for the minutes that have passed me by.
This was such a pivotal stage in my university career, and I began to grow even more anxious through fear of falling behind. Having experienced trauma in the years leading up to this, it probably wasn't that surprising that I developed anxiety, but nothing would ever have prepared me for the years that followed. I was put on medication and went off to university where I embarked on a road of self-destructive behaviors, During this time, I began to experience the horror of sleep paralysis and nightmares. University will be the best time of your life, they all said. But it was the worst years of mine. It was agony in the first year not to drop out. But I didn't want to give in.
Like I can't account for the minutes that have passed me by. It's hard to explain what's wrong, because nothing is. But nothing's right either. I feel like I'm stuck in a vortex, but every sound I make gets lost in the screeching maelstrom. On other days, I feel like I'm drowning in an abyss, legs thrashing, hands flailing, and mind battling the debilitating cold. Sometimes all I want to do is lie still. Let the breaking waves carry me into blissful oblivion. But then the faces of those I love bring me back over the edge. Every single time. I only wonder about the day these faces will stop appearing. Will I succumb to the void?
I lost my second child at 22 weeks in November of 2018. These last 7+ months have been torture for my mind. Our child, a girl, had a severely deformed heart, as well as a rare genetic disease and a few other things that would have made her survival rate less than 1%.
I'm alone. I feel intense loneliness. But when I'm with people, I'm constantly anxious about what they think about me. A few hours ago, he sat on top of me and rained blows on my face. I'm not ready to leave. Say I had a baby 8 months ago and decided to become a stay-at-home mom. So I don't really have a way of starting out on my own.
I have bipolar. To the general public, I come across as normal, stable person living a decent life, happily married, a young child, and a good job. However, I'm different, very different. Every once in a while, at times of great stress, when I'm very tired or when money is tight, I will have an episode. These episodes usually consist of my mind unable to cope with the stress, switching off before I go into what I call a happy place. This is not a place of deep relaxation, but rather a place of my mind racing with thoughts of extreme emotions, a place where I can do anything.
I feel abandoned yet again by the National Health Service. I want to do better, feel better, but I am being given no tools. My dreams are all disturbing and upsetting. When I can sleep, then. I'm so tired all the time, and worse, I feel mentally the more my body hurts. My husband is working all the time because his bosses dump on him, so he's not there for me. I only go out to shop, and that's a struggle because of all the people around. Plus, somebody always has to come with me to help me lift and carry, which makes me feel even more useless.
This is the part where I tell you how abusive I am. I'm really just awful, a monster. My girlfriend and I fight and argue multiple times a day because I antagonize her, I nag. I act controlling and jealous because I am. I'm tired of being the someone else, this person void of the joy that defines my favorite memories. I'm tired of the slog of forward momentum, getting through another day, then another, believing that the dreams of others will bring me peace. I'm tired of that pain in my soul that is a true battle between life and death, where life is the numb side effect and death is void.
Yesterday, I drank myself to sleep, and while I was at it, I relapsed. I hit rock bottom, lost everything I worked towards my whole life. I fell out of college again.
I was diagnosed with bulimia. Although I was suffering for a long time before this, I was living in denial that something was genuinely wrong and I needed help. Like many young women, I was never told to talk about my problems. Never mind anything about mental illness. Instead, we are told, get over it. Rather than talk about what is bothering us, we are told, keep it down, carry on pushing forward.
University education was what all I ever wanted and dreamed of, but because of COVID-19, a major part in this all, I can no longer afford it anymore.
I feel like life is meaningless and I'm frankly fascinated with death. I do not understand why people are afraid of it. I am sort of an agnostic and I would just about kill myself over curiosity. I can't seem to feel meaning in anything I do. I'm trying religion and it's not really working for me so far.
I said that I will always love him and that he can always come back to me. But I feel like he won't. And now, since my attempts at true friendship were never successful, I am truly afraid that by trying to save those people, that I will need saving. And that I will never have a friend who loves me for who I am and does not want to leave me. Just like I do not want to leave him. I was caught innocently kissing a girl. I hadn't even heard of the word lesbian. From then on, my life was a nightmare. Name calling, it hurt. Head flushed down the toilet, humiliating. Teeth knocked out, embarrassing. Skull fractured. I wanted to die.
Other things happened too that weighed very heavily on me. Long-term relationship breakdowns, bereavements, etc. For my last year, still in a dark place, I had to start again with friends and acquaintances and housemates. This hurts. A lot. My partner had moved quite suddenly to live and work in another country. I had always struggled with change, and because it happened so quickly, I just didn't know how to cope. I became incredibly anxious. I tried so hard to open up and talk to her about how I was feeling, but I didn't get the reaction that I had hoped for. I had been very open with her in the past about my depression and just how bad things had gotten, and her reaction had been understanding, but now everything has changed. Maybe she doesn't even love me anymore.
I feel ashamed. I am an intelligent person. I know what I want. I have an aim. Yet, I procrastinate all the time because I feel down. I'm afraid of failure and I don't believe in myself. One day, my boss just took all my work away. I had far too much to do, and so I raised this. I also mentioned I was feeling anxious. She then started taking work away or just not asking me to do things. I was already feeling like I couldn't do my job, and she just confirmed that for me. On top of my anxiety, I now started to worry about losing my job. I was at work, but with nothing to do. I wasn't doing the job they employed me for.
I feel ugly, worthless, and a burden to others. I feel heartless and numb. How do I find a will to live when I don't have a will to do the things that I love? I am 40 and I feel like I have failed at everything in life. Is it too late for me?
My anxiety and low mood didn't disappear just because it was summer. I had bottled up my feelings for so long that by the time I started year 13, I was really struggling and could barely get through a day without crying. My mind makes me analyze everything about a situation and think the worst. It makes me question all the good things and get overwhelmed by the bad.
One day, I finally decided to tell my parents about my sexuality over dinner. My mother became very upset and started to cry. All I could hear was them screaming at me. I didn't know what to do. I told her I was upset and that I was going to stay away from home for some time. I didn't see them for months. My father never cared for me. He had a documented episode of attacking his own mentally ill mother with a hammer when he was in his teens. Analyzing my entire childhood, I remember only 2 moments where he gave me any attention.
I lost my second child at 22 weeks in the November of 2018. These last 7+ months have been a torture for my mind. Our child, a girl, had a severely deformed heart, as well as a rare genetic disease and a few other things that would have made her survival rate less than 1%. Whenever I tried to get help, there would always be a voice in the back of my mind saying that I was making it up and overthinking my problems, thinking there was an issue when there wasn't. I would constantly refuse myself help because there was always someone out there worse off than me. I believed that if I was getting help, I was taking up time that could have been used by someone who really needed it.
Sometimes this place makes you feel guilty for breathing. That's actually how I feel right now. This whole country is an economically stale, passive-aggressive mess that mistreats young people systematically, offering no hope of making a decent living anymore, with middle-aged and older people considering you as a subhuman and labeling you a lazy person without ever having met you. Whatever hope I had, it's gone. I do not want to go on living. I do not want to live. Which options do I have then?
My family doesn't understand a single thing about my situation. It doesn't matter how much I talk to them about it. They will probably just hire a psychologist whose job is to question my suicidal feelings and convince me to get a more positive outlook on life, or give me a convincing reason to keep living, instead of addressing my acute mental, physical health issues. Even though I've come a long way, I still get depression and anxiety and take meds for it and Abilify for the voices. I haven't heard voices or delusions since 2016 when I got Abilify, but I still isolate. I haven't worked since 2002.
I have been cautious with speaking about my diagnosis to some people, as I have unfortunately received comments that are unkind and hurtful. People with EUPD often struggle with how they think and feel about themselves and how they think and feel about other people. And so I worry a lot about how people will view me once they know I have mental health issues. I have received backlash from some people about my competence because of my diagnosis.
You know, when I'm in a dissociative state, I struggle to answer the simplest of questions. Had I been caught in the rain yesterday? What was my last meal? I can't remember texts that have been sent or received. I don't have emotions until I can't cope and have an outburst of anger. Luckily, my autopilot has been very useful and over the years have learned to function on the day-to-day task for me, so I can still work when I feel dissociated. I feel terribly lonely. I want to die. What should I do? I'm 30, I have a job, I enjoy. However, I have no friends. Throughout my 20s, I had friends, but after several moves, I lost most of them.
July 2014 onwards is still a blur to me. I'm aware that I made irrational decisions and I had ever increasing suicidal thoughts. I recall nearly crashing at high speed and feeling bad that I had not died. This was not a wake up call. Instead, I dived deeper into the feelings I had been experiencing. My wife told me to go to the doctors. Why? I said. I'm not ill, I'm okay. I suffered rage and guilt simultaneously.
The comments all came from trusted adults, and being a young teenager myself, I believed them. I had no explanation for how I was feeling, so it became internalized. The remarks they made still go through my head daily and have stopped me getting help when I really needed it, because I was afraid of people thinking the same things and judging me. A lot of passing comments have been made from supportive adults in my life. It's only now that I realize how much they have affected me. A trusted teacher once told me that I was behaving like a little child and was too old to be feeling this way. I was told to stop wasting people's time and I was being a burden and impacting my friends too much. They even said that I shouldn't be so unhappy because my family always went on nice holidays.
When I'm anxious, it is easy to spot. I cannot stay still. My palms may become sticky. I'm unable to follow a conversation and I try to do many things at once. My speech becomes very fast and I'm unable to find the words I want to say. I eventually opened up to my husband. For me, opening up was frightening. At first it felt like I was admitting to being a failure and broken. I was worried that he would not like or want to know this side of me. My son, 23, died of cancer on April 10. I'm often overwhelmed with grief, but also guilt that we weren't able to give him a happier life. He was a difficult child, adopted at 2 after being physically abused.
I had just been unfairly let go of my job in television and seeking legal advice. I was drowning in debt, going through the aftermaths of a breakup. It was a toxic relationship. And I was recovering from an abortion late last year. I was spiraling into a habit of self destructive behaviors, and there wasn't a day that went by where I did not think about ending my life. The icing on the cake. We now had to stay home, all of us, alone.
After we broke up, I was devastated. I never expected something like that from him. He was always taking care of me. I felt like I lost the person I was closest to and the person who cared about me the most. I had suicide thoughts. I stopped hanging out with people. I'm turning 43 next month, and that makes it 30 years that I have felt hurt, angry, but most of all, tired. So tired. I know that most of the pain and fatigue is caused by childhood abuse. I need help. I haven't given up on her in 6 years, and I have no intention of giving up on her now, even when she is doubting my love and support. Everything I've read just says to keep trying, but I don't know how to keep trying without repeating the same things I've already said or things we have tried to do. I've suggested a healthy diet and going on hikes, walks outside, meditation, different types of therapy, but all of those things minuscule compared to this monster of depression.
In my darkest moments, I feel alone, vulnerable, and I feel I cannot trust anyone. I cannot talk to anyone. Bipolar is my best friend and worst enemy.
Something had not been right for months, and it was like this dark shadow was slowly engulfing me. I became more and more ill. I was slowly being taken over by paranoia. I was hospitalized with psychosis more than once. Although at the time I didn't think it was psychosis, in my head my delusions made complete and utter sense, and I had evidence to prove it. Well, I thought I did. Some of my delusions were paranoid, and some were grandiose.
I feel so broken ever since my baby passed. I feel lost. I hurt like someone skinned me, and everything is so sensitive. I just wanted to feel better. I just want my daughter, my baby. I become obsessed with what I looked like. I had to be skinny in order to be beautiful. But the more weight I lost, the more perfect I wanted to be. I lost a lot of weight and fast.
It will be 15 years this coming Mother's Day since I lost my first wife. I was only 30 years old and she was 29. We had been married just shy of 2 years, but together for almost 4 years. She was the love of my life and my everything. I've struggled with depression and anxiety in the past, and I'm struggling now. It's hard to get out of bed, to be motivated, and to go to work, but I do. I'm never fully in the moment. Well, at least that's what it feels like. I feel so hazy and foggy all the time.
I'm usually a very optimistic person who believes in having hope for the future and pursuing my dreams. Yet lately I have found myself empty inside. I start having these feelings of emptiness, like nothing I do matters, like what is the point? I look to my future and I no longer see a path laid out before me. I see confusion, uncertainty, loneliness. My feelings for my newborn daughter are weak a lot of the time. Like she's not mine. I don't wish her harm, but I guess I don't care in a way. Although I love her very much and do care, the emotional feeling isn't there. The rush of love, I just don't have the energy to love her. I lost my husband of 34 years on September 7th from COVID. He had been in and out of the hospital and rehab for the last 3 months.
It has been over a year now since his death, and he would have been 2 years old this year. He passed away September 28th, 2018. I still can't believe how long it's been since I have held him. He was always such a happy alert baby. I miss him dearly. He didn't deserve death. It was only unfair to him to rob him of his life and cutting it so short.
Being called dramatic in the midst of a panic attack is the last word you expect to hear. Unfortunately, that's exactly the word I was faced with. To my partner, that word was a passing comment. He probably doesn't remember saying it. To me, it was confirmation of everything my mental illness tells me. You see, the thing is, mental illness is all in my mind. Anxiety itself tells me I'm being dramatic, and his words confirm that. His fleeting words are the reason why people like me struggle on in silence and make me believe that I definitely don't need help. I obsess over my appearance, and some days I feel like a really good-looking person, and then other days not so much, as I constantly compare myself to others and pick my features apart. I was incredibly lucky when I told my close friends, and everyone was supportive. However, my coming out was often met with, "I always thought you were gay," or another similar comment. I know categorically that my friends were not saying this to upset me, but it made me feel as though I really had no idea who I was, and perhaps even worse, that everyone else knew me better than I knew myself.
I am experiencing more and more discrimination due to people not understanding my illness. People who I thought were my friends have turned against me, with people refusing to sit in the same room as me altogether. To the world, I look clean and presentable, but that often it's not a real me. I'm hurting. I'm scared. I'm tired. I'm struggling on the inside. I'm in pieces, and plaster or bandage won't work, but it's still a real illness.
My PTSD was triggered by several traumas, including a childhood laced with physical, mental, and sexual abuse, as well as an attack at knife point that left me thinking I would die. I would never be the same after that attack. I felt very isolated and alone, unable to talk to anyone for fear of getting an ignorant reaction from others. I was definitely made to feel less than a man by my wife, and it was most certainly a concern that I would be viewed as weak by others. Because even though he was still in my belly, he was my child, my third unborn life, but the farthest along, 20 weeks. Far enough to see his sweet face in a 4D ultrasound, far enough for my stomach to swell with his presence and to feel him move inside of me. I don't know how to cope. It feels wrong to still live my life.
Eight months ago, I lost my son. I was 7.5 months pregnant, and we found out that our son had suffered massive brain hemorrhaging. The specialists all said he would live a tortured life if he survived childbirth at all. We decided at 7.5 months in utero to end the pregnancy so that our son would not suffer. These last 8 months have been pure hell. It honestly feels like I have lost every single friend in my life. I don't hear from most of them when I reach out, and the others make empty promises of catching up. Is this a normal phase in life? Why do I feel powerless when it comes to my peers?
To the world, I look clean and presentable, but that often isn't the real me. I'm hurting, I'm scared, I'm tired, I'm struggling on the inside, I'm in pieces, and a plaster or bandage won't work, but it's a real illness. Whenever I tried to get help, there would always be a voice in the back of my mind saying that I was making it up and overthinking my problems, thinking there was an issue when there wasn't. I would constantly refuse myself help because there was always someone out there worse off than me. I believed that if I was getting help, I was taking up time that could have been used by someone who really needed it. I feel quite depressed because I'm 9 months pregnant and my baby is due any moment, and I still haven't had a baby shower.
As a child, I also was an easy target of bullies. They apparently liked my appearance, or they thought it would be funny and entertaining to bully me. I was weak, isolated, and defenseless, which made me an ideal target for bullies. It honestly feels like I have lost every single friend in my life. I don't hear from most of them when I reach out, and the others make empty promises of catching up. Is this a normal phase in life? Why do I feel powerless when it comes to my peers?
I'm excellent at pretending I'm interested in whatever the current topic of conversation may be, when in fact I'm entirely, momentarily, hopefully, hollowed out, numb, incapable of communication on anything other than a basic level yes, no, okay. When all I want is the conversation to end as soon as possible, as painlessly as possible. But for it to do so would involve me being able to talk, to explain. A dark irony not lost on me as I stare at the tabletop.
I met someone when I was 13 and he was my first love. We started talking online and soon we became extremely close. We met up in the January of 2010 and soon we were going out. This lasted for 10 months and it was the happiest 10 months of my life. But eventually we broke up and this is what triggered everything off all over again. I stopped self-harming when I was 13, and I had promised my mom that I'd never do it again. So instead of physically self-harming myself, I tried to depend on others to do it for me. I used to go out into dangerous parts of town, hoping that someone would do something unforgivable to me. I couldn't see sense.
My dad was diagnosed with bowel cancer, and my anxiety quickly turned into hypochondria. I cannot express through words the shame that a daughter feels believing she herself is dying of cancer when her dad is ill. I had several episodes over the years where I was convinced I had MS, meningitis, cancer of every different part of my body, HIV, diabetes, the list goes on. One day I left work and dropped to the pavement believing I had lost the feelings in my legs. I have spent time plagued with self-doubt and self-hate. I often feel like I am the worst person in the world. I say things and then think those around me are thinking I'm weird or that they hate me. I have spent endless nights overthinking things I have said, what I could have done differently. I have led a double life, dressing up and going out with friends, pretending things are fine, but not letting people know how bad things really are. My family and those who have had relationships with me have witnessed the absolute vulnerability, lack of self-esteem, and a negative self-image that I have.
I'm grossly irritated and impatient, overwhelmed by the noise in the restaurant, ready to explode at the slightest imagined sight. I'm unpredictable. It is our first date, and I'm wondering if she has noticed these things. Should I tell her that I'm often not myself? It doesn't define me, but I worry she'll think I'm making excuses for myself. So I sit there silently, stupidly, collapsing before this beautiful girl. That they know what it is like to be depressed because they've gone through a divorce, lost a job, or broken up with someone. But these experiences carry with them feelings. Depression instead is flat, hollow, and unendurable. It's also tiresome. People cannot abide being around you when you are depressed. They might think that they ought to, and they might even try, but and they know that you are tedious beyond belief. It's easier to say, I have a bad back, than I have bipolar disorder. It can risk me losing a job, not being hired, being misunderstood, and being made a social pariah.
I have lots of bad memories. I grew up in a very abusive home. My childhood was unhealthy in every way. My bad memories are not some nonsense. My nervous system and brain work very differently than most people. This is why no therapist or psychic drug has been able to help me. I can't pop a pill and wish it all away. It took me 5 years instead of 3 for this bachelor's. Right now, I'm supposed to send an application for a master's. These 2 years didn't feel like they were useful. It felt like I was losing my time mostly. And I failed. Failed because I was some kind of master of procrastination.
I'm a 34-year-old female, a failure in life, and struggling at a junior level with 10 years of experience. Even my parents feel I've failed them. I'm not able to progress in life, professionally, financially, and personally. I've spoken to my partner about my feelings in the past. But one day, I came home and the only bearable option seemed to be suicide. I couldn't take feeling this worried all the time. Obsessive thoughts every moment, fighting compulsions so much that all my obsessions remained in my head, playing over and over again in a graphic and animated loop. I couldn't bring myself to tell him that I wanted to die.
I have never had any real friends, and I always feel horrible and terrible because everyone else has someone to go out with. I am sick to death of my life and the way I am. Can you offer me any help with what to do next? Now things are only defined in befores and after. How am I going to continue to work from home, raise two kids, help with e learning, handle home repairs, and deal with my little upcomings, open heart surgery? Some days I feel like the weight of everything will crush me. I'm so damn mad at him for leaving. I don't get to leave.
I have miscarried 6 times and lost a newborn. In 2015, I was diagnosed with bipolar type 2 and social anxiety disorder. Since the diagnosis, I've struggled to keep a job, to keep friends, and to have a life. I suffer from hypersomnia too, where I find myself sleeping for more than 12 hours when I can, just to feel normal. I've been struggling with my moods since I was 11. I'm now almost 28. I couldn't get diagnosed earlier due to my moods being just as erratic as teenagers. I find myself switching from depression to anger to blind rage and then to feeling guilty. There is rarely a day where I feel balanced.
I have depression and anxiety. And I get more depressed because I feel guilty about having depression and anxiety. I feel guilty because of the way it has affected my parents and the ones I care about. It's better now than it was before, but in the past I would have constant panic attacks, and I've caused my parents a lot of grief because of that. The next day, I left him. He threatened suicide with pills I left behind. We both wanted no contact. 6 months later, he's trying to get back into my life, telling me he went crazy and that losing me did that to him.
If I don't have enough alcohol in the house, I panic. I fear that I will run out of alcohol more than anything else you can run out of. I mean, to hell with bread for my daughter's lunch. We will figure something out, but you can't substitute alcohol. I will consider everything that contains alcohol to make sure that I can get through an episode where I need it. Cooking sherry, cheap gin, the nasty spirit to save money on. Whatever, I'll consider it as a precious resource to tap if needed.
It's a living hell. I was born with it, and over time I came to hate it. I couldn't make phone calls, I couldn't answer the phone, I couldn't start conversations, I couldn't ask for help, I couldn't speak in class, I couldn't make friends. I missed dating, dances, proms, graduations, and all other social events. The words would form in my head, but my anxiety would block me from saying anything. I wanted desperately to talk to people, but the anxiety prevented it.
Alcohol combined with depression was hell for me. Main symptoms of depression, such as feeling guilty, feeling inadequate, lack of self confidence, and self control, all contribute to being an alcoholic. If you are in depression, in my opinion, it is easier to become an addict to anything because you're looking for something to hold on, something to live for, and something perhaps to postpone your suicide. Alcohol looks like a solution to all these, but it only covers the dirt, and in the end, you end up with a pile of garbage that you can't even pick up.
Here I am, a 27-year-old guy with no skills, trained in nothing. I even forgot what I studied and I hadn't touched graphic design for almost a year. I wasn't good in sales because of the social anxiety and me being an introvert. I have no plan,
and I think of suicide multiple times a day. I can't get mental help because I tried that for 3 years. And as I said, they eventually said that I was treatment resistant. And to top it all off, my mother told me outright that they've been keeping up with me for 4 years and I shouldn't ask them of anything.
I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety. I've been battling with symptoms for a long time, and while I think I know the trigger, I recognize that anxiety and depression can happen to any of us. And I therefore do not feel this event alone directly lead to my mental illness. As expected, this situation knocked my confidence, and I spent days on end locked in my room at university, constantly crying, feeling hopeless, emotional, and severely low. This was such a pivotal stage in my university career, and I began to grow even more anxious through fear of falling behind. Having experienced trauma in the years leading up to this, it probably wasn't that surprising that I developed anxiety, but nothing would ever have prepared me for the years that followed. I was put on medication and went off to university, where I embarked on a road of self-destructive behaviors. During this time, I began to experience the horror of sleep paralysis and nightmares. University will be the best time of your life, they all said, but it was the worst years of mine. It was agony in the first year not to drop out, but I didn't want to give in.
I've struggled with depression and anxiety in the past, and I'm struggling now. It's hard to get out of bed, to be motivated and to go to work, but I do. I have to. I'm never fully in the moment. Well, at least that's what it feels like. I feel so hazy and foggy all the time, like I can't account for the minutes that have passed me by. It's hard to explain what's wrong, because nothing is, but nothing's right either. I feel like I'm stuck in a vortex, but every sound I make gets lost in the screeching maelstrom. On other days, I feel like I'm drowning in an abyss, legs thrashing, hands flailing, and mind battling the debilitating cold. Sometimes all I want to do is lie still. Let the breaking waves carry me into blissful oblivion. But then the faces of those I love bring me back over the edge. Every single time. I only wonder about the day these faces will stop appearing. Will I succumb to the void?
Having half my mind busy with this all the time slowed me down, distracted me, and calmed me by distraction. But there was always that little voice, a feeling, an urge that if I don't keep it up, terrible things would happen. All of that and the life besides was too much, and I had a breakdown. I had a sedative from the doctor to calm me. Just the one, then I was left to gratefully pull myself back from there.
I feel so lost. I hear us crying even when he's not. I feel like I'm constantly on the edge and have begun neglecting my kids. I know my husband can feel it as he has started talking to me less and less now, and I with him. He asks me to hold my son, and of course I do, but I can't look at him. I feel emotionally empty. My biggest thought is to just leave, run as fast and as far as I can.
I think I have anger issues. I get mad twice a day, off and on. I always seem to piss everyone off when I do. How do I start to get this under control? I am struggling. I can't find a way out, no matter what I do or try. I've felt like this for years, but I can't cope no more. I have a complicated past when it comes to mental illness. My first episode was when I was 11. I was bullied regularly by everyone in school, even by the teachers. I remember one day someone pushed me down the stairs and someone came up to me and asked if I was okay. But when she saw that it was me, she said, "Oh, it's you," and she simply walked off.
I felt like I was not whole. like I was pretending and faking in order to fit in, which drained me of energy and left me feel depleted instead of energized, which is how I think real friendships should be. I thought I was the only one who felt like this and that they wouldn't understand. I don't want to be seen as weak or inferior, and I didn't want to be a burden, so I isolated myself from them. People won't always know if you're struggling. Sometimes it feels like being silent is only viable option. After all, why would you want to burden someone else with your problem?
I don't know how to handle disappointment, and I don't know how to stop feeling angry at my illness. I self sabotage a lot for many reasons. The current reasons are because one, using coping skills is difficult. Two, coping skills may not work and I won't be able to handle disappointment. Three, if I use coping skills and they do work and I feel better, my life will still feel like it's not worth living. Before I was diagnosed with depression, anxiety, and severe ADHD, I was quite obvious to mental health issues. Since then, I have gained much deeper insight into how society views and deals with these issues. I also have come to realize how my words affect the way people interact with me and how they view me as a person. Words are powerful.
So many years of him clouding my judgment and manipulating my emotions and telling me that I'm bad for feeling angry at him for the verbal and physical abuse is given to me. I feel confused as to whether I am really a victim or if all of this is just over exaggerated because of my emotions. I have been out of work for quite some time, and my husband has long passed away. My funds are running out, and I'm not sure where to turn next. I fear that I will become a financial burden to my family if I cannot afford to pay for this long-term care health insurance, which I think I will very desperately need soon. My dad's dementia is progressing to where it is disturbing me. I don't want to admit that I'd rather leave things be, but I couldn't. I do care about him a lot, just I'm not showing it much to detach me from him. I know that it is not right, but do any one of you have recommendations for dealing with oncoming senility?
I've been with my partner for 9 years now. She's 20 years younger than me. The verbal abuse and ageism are unbearable. The last 2 years, I've had cancer, then got sepsis, mainly through stress, and now through my cancer treatment, type 1 diabetes. The abuse has gotten worse, as have the threats of violence. Don't know what to do. I have pretty much overcome my speech impediment now, but I still automatically feel so self-conscious, and I hate attention on my speaking. I still to this day believe that when people hear me talk, they will judge me negatively, because that is what I experienced for years and years.
I only realized that I had symptoms of clinical depression recently, and probably that I've had it a lot longer than I thought. I was always of the belief that depression was a result of a traumatic experience, a loss, stress, unhappiness at home, being bullied, those types of things. But it turns out you can just have a bad brain chemistry. My brain doesn't produce enough serotonin or motivation to do well academically. I often felt worthless, tired, hopeless, and anxious.